It's certainly true that restoration is a younger sister to conservation. It's only about 30 years old in its current form, that is a science-based and community-based approach to addressing environmental ills at local levels. Restoration is always done locally, and it's not about species alone. It's about species and their habitats and their communities and the ecosystems as a whole of which they're part. The basic premise is that we can repair ecosystems that have been degraded by human activities. This is a relatively new idea. In history, people would use up resources and then move on. But that's not viable anymore in today's crowded world. So it's about trying to learn enough on the ground or in the water about how an ecosystem responds and evolves over time to allow us to intervene and stop processes of degradation and reverse them. This will require manipulating the ecosystem components, including soils, water, flora, and fauna, and of course at the same time getting people to think about these processes and work in different ways.
If one of the problems about the environment is that humans have been meddling too much, is it another problem if we start trying to, as you say, manipulate ecosystems?
Yes, that worries many people, but I don't think we really have any choice right now. We are the dominant species on the planet, from A to Z, from 0 to 180 degrees, and we need to accept that role and address three things at once. Restoration is not a panacea by any means. What we're arguing in the Society for Ecological Restoration, we argue that we should develop programs and policies that combine conservation of intact nature with restoration of areas that have been degraded, damaged, or restored, rather than simply abandon them or leave them to repair themselves over centuries. Assist the process of restoration. And finally, at the same time, work on developing sustainable management and sustained use programs. You use the word meddling, but to a large degree it's just about use. We're part of ecosystems, we're part of nature, we have a right to eat, we need fiber, we need fuel, but let's do it in a sustainable fashion and work towards a conservation, restoration, and sustained use program.
Could you give me an idea of an example, rather, of a restoration program that you've been involved with around the world, and perhaps outline the kind of opportunities and the challenges that you faced?
Indeed, in Madagascar, I'm working with the Missouri Botanical Gardens Madagascar program in 11 different conservation sites. As you may remember, in 2003, the former president of Madagascar announced in Durban at the Parks Congress a tripling of conserved protected areas in Madagascar. And agencies from around the world have been trying to help make that happen, including the Missouri Botanical Garden, which adopted 11 sites of high conservation value. And in about half of those, we're working with the local communities living on or around these sites to integrate sustainable farming programs, sustainable forest product use programs, and restoration programs that provide jobs to local people so that the local people can understand and participate in the conservation as well. There are huge obstacles, starting with poverty. These are ecosystem people who can't buy products from elsewhere. They're dependent on a single ecosystem. So we have to acknowledge their needs and address them as best we can, even as we try to move forward with them towards a CRM program, conservation, restoration, and management. The next big thing will be scaling up. For example, on the east coast of Madagascar, there used to be a continuous bank of forest, of dense lowland tropical forest that's now highly fragmented and endangered from the south all the way to the north. With the government and with various aid agencies and NGOs, there's a movement now to plan for a restoration program and a reintegration program of that entire biome that would involve hundreds of local communities. So our goal is to create some prototypes and some pilot scale projects that would help build towards this effort. In southeastern Brazil, there's a similar effort led by the Atlantic Forest Restoration Pact that we heard about this morning. And in South Africa, there's also a wonderful cutting-edge national program that shows that these projects can be scaled up. And the CBD currently has two marvelous opportunities. One is to show the way to all of the parties how to develop national programs, and in parentheses, the Society for Ecological Restoration is helping in that effort in terms of guidelines, tools and technologies, and basic concepts and terminology. Secondly, the CBD can work with the CCD and the UNFCCC to develop international programs that are urgently needed.